And you are live.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. A quorum being present, this meeting of the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission shall come to order. The commission operates pursuant to the land use article of the annotated code of the state of Maryland. Local authority is derived from municipal code of the city of Annapolis, chapter 21, section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to preserve sites, structures, and districts of historical, cultural, archaeological, and architectural significance. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in chapter 21, section 8.06. The HPC operates pursuant to the State of Maryland Open Meetings Act, and no pending application shall be discussed between or among commissioners outside the public hearing to determine the disposition of the application. Okay. Next on our agenda is our roll call. I am Tim Leahy. I serve as chair. We have Bobby Collins, who's our vice chair.
Here.
Kevin Smith. Will Scott.
Here.
Hello, Leslie Xavier. Right on time. And Kim Finch.
Here.
Great. We also have our staff, John Tower. And
Here.
Kimberly Consoli will be taking our notes for us and creating the minutes. Okay. With that, we only have one item on the agenda tonight, and that is a pre-application for the Burtis House. So Madeline, would you please bring back Melanie? And hopefully she will be able to.
Yes, I also have Laura Houston, who is on the same project.
Okay, great. I assume she is with you, Melanie? Yep.
She is with me virtually.
Okay, she's right. She's with Preservation Maryland, who is actually.
Yes.
All right,
So,
great.
Melanie Hartwig Davis, HD Squared Architects. Thank you, everybody.
Welcome, Laura. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you.
So, Melanie, this is a pre-application. I just need you to acknowledge the fact that it's a courtesy extended to the applicant in order to provide comments on design and compliance and feasibility regarding the guidelines. Do you acknowledge that anything that is said here should not be taken as approval or disapproval, but just comments for further development?
I do acknowledge.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's see. We all have seen your packet that you submitted, and I hope we had a chance to look at it. Looks like a lot of progress has been made, lots of detail. So are you able to share your screen and walk us through what you'd like us to know?
Oh, the challenges. I am not sure if I'm able to share my screen. I don't know if you were part of the but I'm on my iPad because my laptop camera has just stopped working. I may be able to join back and share screen though.
Well, let me see if I can share mine.
Let's see.
I might be able to do this.
Melanie, if you are going to do that, I'll readmit you. Just make sure that your volume's turned off on the computer.
All right, let's give it a try. How many
I
devices?
believe I also have the packet that was submitted to the commission. So
Okay.
if we need to, I can probably share my screen as well.
Give Melanie another minute there, and then I'll cut to the chase and have Laura share.
Do you like me to fill the time?
Okay.
Okay, so I just looked at the detail for the solar array on the garage. And it's basically just a snap-in piece. The panels are going to lie flat on a steel structure, and there's an edge piece. In other words, it has an edge piece. It's not exactly what we talked about. There it is.
So it doesn't really require a skirting, is that what you're saying? It's not more than.
Yeah, because you're not going to have the sawtooth.
Right,
effect.
okay, that was the.
The
point
other
of the
thing that's
skirting.
really interesting about these solar panels is they're two-sided. So they'll take in any reflected light.
Nice.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
more efficient.
All right, so it's still a very thin detail, though it's not a jagged, which is what we were concerned about.
Yeah, I think that this will take care of it. The question then is, and Tim, you and I could talk about this. We can actually have more panels, but they're going to slightly overhang the steel structure by a foot and I think a couple of inches on two sides, the east and west side. My greatest worry about that was since they aren't very high up, that they might present themselves as something that someone might want to jump and grab. As a useful
Right.
thing.
Well,
Right.
from a design point of view, that if it's a clean edge, it doesn't have the same concern that we had in our approval.
Right, and we could have that many more PV panels,
Good.
which
All right.
is a great thing.
Sounds like a good outcome. Okay.
Okay.
So, thanks, John. All right,
Sure.
Melanie, we can see your screen now, so that worked.
So now can you
Take it
hear me?
away. Yes.
And me again too. Sorry, I've got 3 different size screens in front of me.
Oh my goodness. So last time we spoke was in September, I believe the 22nd of September. And just to refresh our memories a little bit, we interested in window treatment and how the windows were going to be treated in phase 1. And I think you'll talk about that. And the foundation, it looks like there's more detail on the foundation articulation there, and also mock-ups from each of the directions. And it looks like you provided some of that. So why don't you walk us through it?
Okay, let's see. Let me get a few documents queued up here. There. So yes, there has been a good bit of discussion, and I think some of the overarching thought tonight is just to keep in mind the scope that Preservation Maryland and HD Squared Architects has for phase 1. So in these renderings here, you start to see a glimpse of the wall and the display boards with the narratives to come. We show both I think if we go to the, I'm not going to talk a lot about the civil, if that's okay. I'm going to skip through the civil part, but in the architectural site plan, I'll zoom in here. One thing that we have shown and that I know is the topic of discussion are the various fences that are going to happen on site, and the transformation and the assistance that they provide in keeping this both a safe but also aesthetically manageable process as it's in transition. So you can see here the furthest line of the fence and the furthest out is noted as the construction fencing. And that's been, it will also, this face here, along with the face towards the park, will be the face that the city of Annapolis anticipates putting their display on. The media, then what will come in from that is when the construction fence goes away, the city's fencing and display will come still along the same property line area for the face towards the park, but then allow the alley to come back into play and use when the construction fence can go away. And then Preservation Maryland's fence, when it comes to the final fence, tucks in and is right along the building for protection and security, but has the Preservation Maryland and the Burtis House history display on it. So those are some of the fences you'll see. Obviously, I don't know how much detail you want to get, but we have the structural incorporated into the drawings at this point. We have an aerial at this point here showing
is that the third fence, the final fence effectively,
the
or
final
the phase 1 final fence?
phase 1 final fence.
Okay.
So we are suggesting a chain link fence with the display panels on that for long durability and longevity. It's longevity of the temporary longevity, if you will. Then we have, of course, more detail. We'll kind of zoom in here. About, again, we're not restoring at this point. So we have the foundation wall, the new FEMA foundation wall. We have the brick line. Again, the brick line here, the transition between the painted CMU FEMA flood walls, and then the transition to the brick. We anticipate the grade in the future coming up to this brick line. This is a temporary stair to access here. And then ultimately, when the grade comes to here, that porch has the same context and relationship for historical context. Let's see. Are there any questions about this? I can zoom into any in particular. Of course, we do have the photographs at the end as well that'll show in context and with that. But any questions so far?
So Melanie, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, John. This is Jackie Rouse. I work in planning and zoning.
Hi, Jackie.
I do
Welcome.
zoning review of applications. And I think you've had at least one meeting with city people on the permitting side. So I believe there was an email sent to your engineers about you need a critical area consistency report for this. And you're going to need a flood certificate. And I would assume that your engineering firm is working with all of those aspects. And you're also going to need a zoning analysis. The property is zoned WMC, and you will have to, as part of your HPC application, you know, when you move to that stage, submit that additional information for review.
Sure, certainly.
Can I, then I just have one question about the alley. Is that alley part of the property, and is that only who has rights to use that alley? Is that a common use alley, or is that part of the Burtis House property?
It's
That's
my,
part of the Burtis property. So
Okay,
that's city owned.
right, I
so-
understand that, but so no one else has any rights of use of the alleyway, is that correct?
If you, I don't know of any easements for that or any rights of use to my
Okay,
knowledge, yeah.
that's normally something that would be researched as part of the, you know, your process to make sure that no adjacent property owners have any rights to the alley. You have to, by doing a deed research.
We've spoken with the city, various Board of Public Works folks and zoning, planning, et cetera. They're aware of the plan to extend the fence, the construction fence
Okay,
to
well,
that
we
area.
still require documentation on the use. of
And
the-
there's not been any sort of concern about.
Well, okay,
that being true.
I'm seeing an alleyway. I work in zoning. I do the zoning review for projects in the historic district, and we will need some kind of analysis of, you know, some kind of documentation that no one else has rights to use the alleyway.
note made.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. One clarification on back, if you go a few slides forward, Melanie, please. Just the large surfaces where the demolition has left gaps. It doesn't, what material is that?
So that is a painted sheathing. We have a,
Mhm.
I know we have a detail of that, so I can.
But, yeah. So for the period of that we're talking about for this application, that's just going to be a plain sheathing with the plan to basically put storyboards or
Correct.
something rather than finishing it with a siding of any sort. And I assume the intent would be eventually that would be either finished in the final product or covered up with an addition of some sort. Is that the idea?
That is correct. At this point, we're going to try to frame it out and make it as display worthy as possible while keeping within the budget and the temporary nature of the area. And so there is a section of that here, detail of
Yeah.
that.
It's going to be in place for quite a while. So I don't know whether the commissioners think of a little more detail rather than just a large sheathing, regardless of what's put on it. Because we don't know about what artwork may or may not go on it, correct?
That's true. I mean, that's in development still with the University of Maryland, but and Preservation Maryland. But I do believe the approach and the thought is that it's more of a mural situation, that we have these more permanent murals going on buildings around the city. So this is, you know, a permanent temporary mural in our minds.
Okay.
So, Melanie, it's John Tower. Hi. So whatever mural is going up will need a
Separate application.
its own application.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I had a question. I wasn't aware of this. So Prince George Street is, there's a plan to raise the end of Prince George Street.
The Pocket Park area.
Well, I'm not saying Pocket Park necessarily. I'm thinking just, you know, the actual end of Prince George Street in front of Berta's house, where the CMU are visible. I didn't realize that the street was going to be raised that much. And this is at the front side on.
So you're asking. Okay, I'm sorry. You're asking. This wasn't okay. So it's our understanding that in discussions with the city that their ultimate goal is to create a pocket park from this portion of Prince George. And that would involve raising the grade up. That is a phase 2 part, but that is what you know, Bryce and I have discussed. I know that he's keeping that in mind as he does his work with the larger city dock planning, and the phase 2 as it's in its very early infant stages. So we're going to get a presentation for
Monday.
Is that right?
I thought it was Thursday. Actually.
Yeah, I thought it was Thursday.
Thursday.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and so this is just a portion of the plan that, how should I put this? It's only a design idea. So if this doesn't get raised, we're going to have CMU visible with brick on top. Do you see what I'm saying? If it doesn't get raised, that's going to be the finish there. And I don't know the budgets for all of this, and I don't know all of the designs. I'm certainly not the designer, but that's a cost savings measure to have CMU as opposed to the brick. But I'm not 100% sure that we're going to be covering all of that CMU.
Well, my crystal ball isn't working today, but this is what the CMU is also, the standard FEMA wet flood wall detail. So yes, it's a cost savings. Painting it adds some level of aesthetic and protection, but it breaks up obviously the proportions and just kind of the massing of the CMU to have that have the brick, which also of course keeps in context with the historical.
It was a common thing to do.
I'm not really sure what, I mean, Laura, I don't know if you have a thought or if you've had conversations with the Park Service or other people that I may not have been privy to, that, somebody has to make the first step and do the first, raising up of a building. So how that's approached and, aesthetically, is in the future, if that doesn't come up, is it a landscaping resolution? That's
right.
I don't know that it can be successfully hidden with landscaping. I'm just saying this might end up having to go back to brick because we don't know what the future of Prince George Street is. We know what the intent is.
Mm-hmm.
But is it a design intent or intention, or is it a budgeted improvement? So it's a footnote. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
May I ask one question?
Hey, Bill, yes, let the
I'm
record show.
sorry.
Bill
Sorry to
has
be a little
joined
late.
us. That's right, Bill has joined us.
The brick, treat it just as a veneer. Recess the flood vents a little bit into the wall and put block behind it. I don't know why that would not work. You still have the strength of the block, and you reinforce the block, and you get the aesthetic.
Sure.
Well-
So to go from ground up is what you're saying.
Mhm.
Yeah, why not?
Great. I will absolutely discuss that with Preservation Maryland and see, if there's any impact for them or thoughts on their end.
That would be a more desirable approach. On the follow-up kind of question, eventually, I guess, never mind, I'm gonna be asking more questions about conjecture about the future, but I think what we can only deal with what we know now. This is hopeful that it would raise up, but we really don't know that. So for this phase, I think we have to assume that it doesn't get raised yet. So I think that would be a recommendation to take a look at a brick veneer. I assume that this is a brick veneer anyway, or is this actually just a brick wall from a construction?
Yeah, well, we were definitely going to salvage the bricks that are there.
Yeah.
But we
And I
could-
guess it's really supported by columns. The structure is actually supported by the columns, not the brick wall, I assume.
This has probably already been addressed, but I don't know the answer. This is phase one, and it's a temporary, how long is that phase one anticipated to be? There's no idea no time estimate?
Hopefully, it coincide with the completion of City Dock. So if you can tell us anything about what the
We can ask that
forecast for
question.
City Dock is 4 years away, 3 years away.
Right, so it could be 5 years, it could be,
3 to 5
10
years, I think, would
I
be
mean,
reasonable.
so I think it's something to keep in mind, because the word temporary sort of implies that it's, to me, a much shorter period of time.
I would say 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, it's short term. Perhaps
one.
that's,
It's phase one.
Yeah,
I think we should-
better
yeah.
terminology, but I think the city's devoted more attention to this structure recently, given the phase one conversation around it. And so the hope is that it will be on the shorter, under that 3 to 5. But I think that's a good estimate, Tim, is to say we're looking at, and that's hopefully a high estimate, but it's meant to coincide with the broader City Dock, because as the work behind the Vertus House is beginning, they'll need to account for the proposed addition and site work along with the rest of the City Dock work.
Mhm. Okay, other thoughts about, other commissioners have any thoughts or comments on this proposal? The only thing I have brought up is just the large scale of the sheathing that's plain.
Tim?
For the short, again, that's intended to be phase one only.
Tim?
Yeah.
I guess I would just take this moment to say that this is a building that has, in my opinion, little architectural significance. It is more cultural and historical significant. And so as long as we're preserving the massing, the scale, the height and bulk, and the type of architectural decoration, limited as it is, that was original, then a lot of these things are both not terribly significant, I don't think, and we're obviously dealing with a very fluid, and I don't mean to refer to the floodwaters, a very fluid situation. So to spend a lot of time trying to suss out whether it should be brick or cement block is maybe something that we can't even resolve at this point. We can just, as you did, Tim, I think, encourage, rather Bill did, encourage using brick veneer and settling that. But that seems to be the reasonable kind of approach to me.
Okay. All right. Other commissioners, thoughts?
So I think it's a very important genre of architecture in Annapolis. And I think, I kind of think it is important to have something that not necessarily historically, totally historically accurate, but something that is more in keeping, like either brick or even galleting or some sort of something having to do with Riverstone that ties and hides that foundation.
Well, that's an interesting point, Leslie, but galleting, we don't even know why people did it. But
Well,
what we-
that's exactly the point. I mean,
But no, I think the point is that the people that did it were people who could afford to spend money on something that was, as far as we can tell, decorative. I don't think that even would have been utilized in a modest house of this kind. So I'd keep it as simple as possible.
Simple. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you can look at a few examples around town where the buildings were raised and they were placed on brick foundations. I know of one specifically. So I guess, so we don't have a concern with the scale of the murals. They're going to be fairly large. And again, if it's phase one, we don't have a concern that it's just for a period of time from 3 to 5 years. That we assume they will be treated in the final application for phase two is what I'm hearing. No one has a problem with that assumption at this point.
So the murals will be removed with phase two, is that what?
Well, when we
saying?
get to phase two, we will have a discussion about the final treatment. This would not be approved as a final treatment in my mind because it doesn't relate to the existing siding. But we assume that the additions are going to cover these, and if they don't, there'll be just a further discussion of the treatment to make it consistent with the German siding.
Then I have one more question that's zoning related. Is there any, I think in previous discussions I've heard about this, it's been referred to that it's being mothballed. Is there any proposed short-term use of the building?
No.
It's just going to be like, just vacant. Is that correct?
That's correct. It is no condition to be habitable.
No, I was just clarifying that.
Yeah. I mean, I think if at some point in time, I mean, we know that the city administration is very determined to do an addition and have the phase two. If something happens and for some reason that does not come to fruition, then absolutely I would see, organizations stepping in and the city deciding, okay, well, what is plan B for Burgess House? And that's when the restoration, in my mind, I mean, I'm speaking without consulting with them. So this is just in my,
I think that's a reasonable assumption.
Yeah,
that's my
sounds
assumption.
like it.
One more question for you. The window you introduced in the first sheet of the presentation or of your documents has to do with the panels in the windows with vents in them. But I see that you're going to basically maintain the windows as they are and not necessarily rehabilitate them in phase one, but at least maintain their weatherproof nature and the glass. But so I was confused by the introduction of those dramatic pictures of plywood with vents.
So interesting that you should point that out.
It was on the first page.
No. So the windows that do need to be ventilated would be and are proposed to. I lost it. Sorry, guys. Proposed to be the vented. We are consulting with Barton Ross and Partners on the historic nature of that, and they provided, and I know you have, I'm trying to bring it over to the screen. You have this in the paperwork that you were provided. They've shown where other areas where historic,
Yeah.
national historic landmarks and other treatments that have been
Yes.
used in with approval, I happen to think that the vents are more attractive than some of these.
Yes, clearly. So which windows will be considered for this venting?
So, and I have to admit, I am still waiting for some feedback on that. I apologize because those images don't show the photo renderings don't show the
The vented
full.
ones.
Yeah, so we will need to edit that. There we go. Back to
Yeah.
that. I think we were a little proud of our.
Yes, these look great. These are the mock-ups we asked for.
Yes. So we will update those and finalize that.
What's the current thinking is many, most, a few?
I think corners, usually it's generally about the corners, and having, and it also depends, I believe, on the resulting interior rooms. But it has lasted, it has been in this condition for years without the ventilation. So I think it's a matter of what rooms are still on the interior, and having some select with a pattern, ones that are vented. That makes sense, right? We don't necessarily want just an odd arrangement.
Correct. Even though it is phase one, we still want it to be
Yes.
organized.
Yeah, and I will definitely follow through on that.
Okay.
Final submission.
Okay, other questions or comments, commissioners?
Yeah, Tim, how long is the construction phase to get to this final phase one phase estimated to be?
You mean the construction phase for phase one in order to get it to this point that we're seeing here?
Yes.
Yeah,
We think approximately 3 months, 2 to 3 months, Melanie, or
Yeah.
when construction starts and begins.
Yeah, we think about 2 to 3 months. It's obviously very weather dependent. Based on our geotech studies, they are recommending we do this in the driest months of the year, which are the summer. So we're optimistic that we can get, hit a shovel in the ground or and raising this come about, between the holidays, after commissioning week and before Labor Day.
Okay.
Within that time frame.
Great. All right. If there are other comments, I'll go ahead and summarize our thinking on this pre-application. The application has made a lot of progress in terms of detail. It looks like it's almost ready to go to bids because there's a lot of detail. And that's good news. That's great news. The commission was mainly focused on the treatment of the foundation, the new foundation, and would suggest that the brick detail be carried as far down to the ground as possible because we really don't know whether the ground will be raised there, and we would be left with a CMU wall and a brick wall, which would be very inconsistent with the surrounding historic buildings. So that we would like you to consider and provide feedback on that. We also mentioned the fact that the large areas, the facade where the demolition is occurring, there was no problem with any of the demolition, as in the prior discussion as well. Demolition is always an issue, and it's been confirmed that the demolition is feasible. But the large blank areas that are left are going to be treated with a sheathing and are likely to be then eventually interpreted with art projects, which will come back as a separate application. And then finally, more detail on what exactly is going on with the windows and their venting, and also a window condition report would be useful to have in the record. You'll need it eventually, but an inventory of the historic windows and an inventory of those is going to be needed eventually. And then finally, Jackie Rouse mentioned a whole series of approvals that need to be in place before your final application comes to the commission. So I think you have acknowledged the fact that you are aware that those need to be done, including documentation for the use or any potential easements in the neighboring building on that alley.
Yes.
Okay, commissioners, did I summarize? Did I miss anything?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, I think we're excited to see this moving forward. I am personally, I know that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you and look forward to it.
Great.
All right. The only other item we have on our agenda is administrative business. I have one item to report. I did get a response from Maryland Historical Trust from Nell Zeal that the funding opens for grants for rewriting, updating our guidelines. We can apply for a grant, and that opens in February. So I'll be working on that. And I'm also soliciting additional names for consultants that that we might be able to use to do that work for us. So that's made a little progress. And I'll work with John on getting that grant written and getting the city. I can help create the grant, but the city will eventually be the actual submitter of the grant. All right. Any comments on that or any other business?
Tim, when do you think we would begin the actual rewriting, or when will we incur costs? Because I could put something in, ask for money in our budget too.
I agree. I think the grant's not going to cover the whole cost. So I think we need to talk about that, John. I think we should be looking at budget discussions start soon, right?
Yes, now.
Yeah. Okay,
now.
let me, you and I can talk, but I think that it's going to be, I'll try and get an estimate and figure out, we'll look at other grants that have occurred. But
okay.
I don't know, something between 25 and 50,000. I don't know. $25,000, $30,000. I don't know.
Well, I'll ask for a nominal fee. I don't know that we'll get all of it, but I'll
nominal. Yeah, I'll try and give you a budget that has some valid research behind it. X number of hours at dollars per hour.
Okay.
Tim?
Yes, Will.
I have a question of John and Jackie. And it's about this recent decision by Judge Vitale about the city's development and adequate facilities ordinance, how that impinges upon our development. And has there been any discussion or instruction from the Office of Law or the administration about how that might affect the historic district? Because somebody could still build a new home, or they could enlarge an existing home so that it had more capacity for residents, and that could potentially violate the court's order. So it's a complex question. I'm really only looking for a simple answer. Has there been any discussion yet that has come to either of you who deal with the historic?
Well, you could actually include Tim in this, because we met with Historic Annapolis and Eric Lashinsky, who is writing the legislation. And we went through the possible scenarios for affordable housing being created within the historic district. And the simple answer is that it appears to be economically unfeasible. And I hate to say that, but it's true. We went through the different scenarios, and this was with Eric. The possibility of it being created within the historic district seemed very slim, which isn't necessarily a great thing, because we do need workforce housing that might be able to actually walk to work. But I don't know that new construction or redevelopment will be easy to do with the kind of investment required.
Okay, your answer was very helpful, and I appreciate it. But I think what I was driving at is something that's even a little more narrow, and that is the way the judge's decision was reported in the paper. The ratio that the adequate facilities ordinance requires means that if somebody wanted to, I would interpret it as if somebody had a large house that had been used for single family residence, and they came in and they wanted to subdivide it so that they could have a number of apartments, that could be feasible. That's not the same economic lift, but yet it would increase the population, and would that mean they would have to be told no until this larger issue of adequate police coverage is solved?
And traffic. It's kind of a different issue. You're right, Will.
Well, it is a different issue, and I can only tell you what the buzz that I heard said, and that is currently it would be a very heavy lift to get an approval, because the city doesn't have adequate coverage and resources in certain areas.
So in a sense, you're saying, and in this case, I would not object as a citizen taxpayer, the can's been kicked down the road until something happens, until somebody tries to do something and they say, well, okay, we can't do that right now.
Well, I'm certainly not against affordable housing, multiple units within a larger building. I mean, they're typically, the formula is condominiums that are sold.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think I've muddied the water.
Yeah, I think your point is, I understand what you're saying though, Will. I think they're two different issues. And I think if they don't come to some decision on the judge's order, none of the affordable stuff might be able to happen.
Exactly. You're exactly right. There's two separate issues, and the housing needs to be argued on its own merits, but it's caught up in this decision. Yeah.
In any case, it doesn't appear to have an impact on the historic district.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Good. Interesting discussions. All right. Well, if there's no other business, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.